so honored to have you here. This is amazing that you said yes to join us. And this is our third quarter, and we've been spending the whole morning today exploring global initiatives that are creating change on the planet. As a money coach and a financial intuitive, it tickles me to explore money. And you have been one of the people in Vancouver that I have been stalking. No, I've been really, really getting myself into the world of Joel and understanding how and what motivates you in working with money, finance, and change. And it resonates with my message and everything that I'm doing in such a profound way that I'm on the moon. Just the idea that you're here with my community. So I just first want to say thank you.
I'm delighted to know about you, and I feel flattered, of course, by all that you've said, and a little bashful, but I'll get over it. But what I was really pleased about is I had no idea that there was a group here working on the kind of the DNA of money and what it is beyond those pieces of paper and numbers, where it comes from, and most of all, how it affects us as spirits, and how it affects our spirit, and where did it come from, and what's behind all of that. And so I'm really honored that you and your team and your group are people that are thinking about that, because I believe that money can be the most toxic substance on the planet. It carries a lot of history and in its DNA, and it causes us to act in ways that may or may not be natural, and it causes a lot of stress and trauma. And so the psychological and the emotional and the spiritual dimensions that come for us around money can be incredibly crippling, and they can also be super empowering and powerful. And money can do some of the most beautiful and important things that can happen in our lifetimes. That is not a simple area, and we're not given very much help in that exploration. So I can see that that's what you're attempting to do, and I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for recognizing this, because just before you came on, someone in the group said, well, what is your global initiative? What is your mission on the planet?
Yeah.
And the thing that lights every cell of me up, and the thing I know what I want to accomplish in my lifetime, and at least begin it, is to begin to transform the consciousness around money so that it is about connection and love. And I've heard you say these exact words almost in some of the talks that you have given. So this is why it's very exciting for you to be here, and all of the things that you've done in the work that you've done in the world. I would really, really like to have my community know what it actually takes to create the change that you are creating right now. And for those of you that will be listening to this later, Joel Solomon is the co-founder of Renewal Funds, and I would like you to speak a little bit about that. And he's also the author of a book that's coming out May 1st. Is that correct? The Clean Money Revolution, which is such a beautiful title, by the way.
Good.
And I can't wait to get my hands on that. But because everyone here, we've talked about some of the questions we want to ask you, and to see like what it takes to do what you've done, and some of the challenges that you've encountered, and what motivates you to keep moving forward and creating what you are creating. But before you go into that, can you explain to our community what Renewal Funds is, and how you got to where you are in maybe a succinct kind of way, just so we get a bit of a picture for people that don't know you?
You have a big job on your hands to manage me to succinctness. Renewal Funds is a mission venture capital firm, and it's modeled on somewhat traditional venture capital, however, with that mission part, which means that we first want to know what the entrepreneurs and what the company is about, what the products are going to do in the world, and why that is positive and constructive. And so that's our first screen. And then we do most of the traditional things of due diligence and checking through companies with a few twists that I can tell you about if you get interested. We focus, we manage $98 million of other people's money. We invest best that we can as well, but it's mostly other people's money. And that represents over 190 investors,
Mm.
primarily about equal between Canada and the US, a few Europeans and Asians. And it is individuals, families, charitable foundations from their asset base, and from some boutique wealth managers that attempt to help their clients get outside typical products. So that's and we invest in organics and environmental technologies. So that's the business.
Fantastic. And your Clean Money Revolution book, that is it a culmination of all of your work that you've done? Is it?
It is. This came from oh gosh, I can't go too many stories. This came from my lifetime of considering issues of money and wealth and how it can be turned into how it can actually manifest as as a super powerful tool for doing good in the world, which is what I actually believe it is and should be. That can start with taking care of yourself and your family. But in thinking about those over time and moving towards my 60s, I realized that we're in very increasingly confusing times, and that money could be doing so much more, and that I had the privilege to be exposed to a lot of the creative thinking and digging into these questions just because of my own curiosity and my own situation. And that I was actually walking around with an encyclopedia of information for sure, experience for sure. And then the question we'll find out is points of view and useful things to share about that, and conversations to initiate. So I decided that as an elder, it's important that I and we all do this. Those of us that have been able to navigate life and come out in a fairly good place, or those who may not. We need to share stories, insights, and information so that others after us, particularly younger ones, have some roadmaps outside of what commercial mainstream society offers, in addition to.
So, Joel, my question to you is, have you always been someone that saw how to change the world and contributing to that? Or was there a catalyst that you had encountered in your life where it changed directions? Like if you were to talk about the path that you've been on.
Well, I was fortunate with the parents who created me. And my mother is an artist, professional artist. She does black and white photography. She's still producing books and shows in her late 80s, and lives in New York. There doing her career, but she always had a unconventional eye and curiosity and critique of the world. My father was very responsible, child of an immigrant who wanted to take care of his family and do something contributory in the world. And he got into business and was successful with that through my childhood. And really, as I became in my teens, his success really kicked in. And I was born and raised in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we're talking the 1950s and 60s. Jim Crow, which was the system of discrimination that kept African Americans in particular separate and with reduced opportunities, showed up even in my own family, because as they got into the movie theater business in town, and they had a colored theater, and
Mhm.
there were colored uh, water fountains and bathrooms and things like that, and many other things during the 50s and 60s that I just was a kid and I saw it happen. Then the Vietnam War came about, and there was a lot of turbulence and summer of love and a lot of questioning going on that I was seeing. And it caused me to ask questions. And at that time, I think it mostly made me rebellious and grumpy and and as a response to not knowing what to do with my feelings about it and what I should do with my life. First, it was reaction, and then there's a long pathway after that that caused me to seek and search what would be my meaning and purpose, and what I was going to do with whatever tools and life that I was given. And I can only, the moment that I most remember where something crystallized. I don't know if people here are old enough to remember this or know about it, but the 1968 Democratic Party convention, when Eugene McCarthy was running for president. And anyhow, I won't get the story too long, but I'll say in Chicago, there were what I believe we should call police riots, where some hundreds of thousands of students were out protesting and started getting beat up and tear gassed and things, and talking about the whole world is watching. And I was really moved by this idea that people would devote their lives to actually questioning things. And there were things that I felt deserved to be questioned. I didn't know how I would do it or what I could possibly do. It just kind of put me in questioning and some doubts. I was being trained to go into what had become the family business, which now was shopping malls. And so I would just say there was a lot of uncertainty, doubt, confusion, critique, and longing to find meaning and purpose for myself.
When did you make a big decision to make this your life's journey?
Well, skipping ahead, in my mid 20s, after being diagnosed with a family genetic kidney disease that I was told I could die very soon from,
Mhm.
or not, but that there was nothing I could do about it. I I left behind what had been some fairly some career opportunities that one might consider very meaningful. I had worked for Jimmy Carter and made it to the White House with him. I'd started at the beginning of the campaign, and I just the diagnosis and having seen even more of how the world works, I decided it was too early for me to make a choice like that. And I did the same with the family business. And I went out on I guess seeking and searching to understand what was an authentic way for me to be with the times and with the specific characteristics that were given to me.
So, what did you do?
Well, I went and learned gardening, and I caretaked an orca research laboratory
Right.
near the north end of Vancouver Island, which is
Is that what brought
our,
you here to Vancouver? Yeah.
first the farming
Yeah.
to Cortez Island outside Campbell River, but I wanted more remote, and I wanted to be away from people for a while.
Right.
And so the caretaking position showed up, and I thought, well, let's test out the theory. So I spent several years with a lot of silence, a lot of reading, a lot of thinking. The job was build gardens, feed the dogs, and don't burn down the facility. So that it wasn't very demanding in terms of taking my time. So I really had a chance to, I guess you could say, study,
Mm.
do a new personal course of studies, following what high school and university had given me. So I read a lot and thought a lot about how the world had gotten to be how it is. And the I guess the next revelatory time was that my father moved to his deathbed from this kidney disease. And I came back to Tennessee to be with him. And all of that combined caused me to feel that the best thing I could do, given all that I had access to, rather than to reject it and condemn it, that what was most useful was to go back into it and do it in a way that was authentic for me.
So you were going to use your privilege to the best of your ability.
To do what I could to contribute to make the world better, and that included a big part about if I'm going to accept having inherited money that came from where it came from, I wanted to do things that I would feel good about at my deathbed.
Hmm. Well, I mean, I think what you've done and who you teach and how you, I see you a bit of as like a mentor too to a lot of communities and organizations and things that are changing as well. However, I know that you run businesses, right? Like you've the nuts and bolts of making something happen and negotiating challenges and difficulties and moving through all of that. If you're okay with us kind of moving into that realm a little bit, um, just because I know that sometimes we see the end product of a company and the change that we're making, and
Right.
we don't really realize what it takes to get there and what it takes
Yes.
to make work. And does I mean, I have a question about that, but I'm just gonna. Does any of you? Do any of you have a question as Joel has been talking at all? So when you've been running, like, I mean, I think it's grown from the ground up in a lot of ways, but you co-founded and you co-partnered with Carol. And at what time did that happen? Or is there something before that happened that you would have a good example of challenges that you've faced and how you've navigated them?
Well, first was inheriting some money and then going and seeking to be with other people who had and understanding how they'd handled it. And from there, finding how they managed things and such. And I think it turns out I was fairly entrepreneurial energy. And I listened to a lot of stories of people that were the early, I think at this point, they look like the early pioneers of do good businesses and organics and business as a tool for social impact. And I got to effectively listen and study at their knee, the knee of their experience,
Mm.
not the academic side. But I found an organization called Social Venture Network that was an early attempt to talk about the possibilities of what a positive force business could be if used with intention and hard work. And at the same time, I've gone back to Nashville and inherited a few $1,000,000 from shopping malls, and I wanted to do something with that I could draw on these models, and it was of course very daunting. Uh, who am I? And these are the greats, and how can I do this? And so I just went back to very simple principles, and I thought a lot about what about shopping malls at the time was bugging me, and part of it had to do with the killing off of urban centers and neighborhoods as things went more suburban and automobile oriented. So I, with my now one of my very best pals in Tennessee, we were just young guys trying to figure something out, and we would do a lot of walking around at night, looking at stuff and thinking about things and how did it work. And we came to the idea that we wanted to work in the 1 mile radius,
Mm.
and that we would have a strategy that said, well, this neighborhood, if we can fix up a house, we can put a garden in the front and show what you can do with this land that's underutilized. We can use paint colors that are more interesting than the various levels of beige that used to dominate Nashville. And that all of this was about vitality and community. And we started real estate company and a coffee business and some things that were very involved with neighborhoods. And we used principles that we had seen Ben and Jerry and Stonyfield and Patagonia and Body Shop and companies like that. We just said, well, how can we adapt this to our work? So as an example, we would give ownership to charity at founding. What had happened with Ben and Jerry's and some others is they would commit a percentage of profits. And I thought, well, we can do better than that. We can commit. You can always change your mind on a percentage of profits, but let's give a percentage of ownership. And I was involved with a very innovative social enterprise charity at the time that called the Tides Foundation out of San Francisco. And they were attempting to prove that you could make a business, a good business, out of providing charitable services for people that wanted to go beyond what was typical in philanthropy at the time. And so they would provide program people and research and monitoring, or they could provide you with a docket of opportunities and things like that. So we donated 5% of our real estate company to Tides, and they became one of the shareholders. So in any case, that was just one example. So we took these businesses and just followed our instincts, read, saw examples, asked a lawyer and accountant, can we do this? Why not? Why can't we do it? How can we do it rather than can we do it?
Right.
And these were very modest. These were startup companies without a lot of money behind them, but it was, I figured out something from being involved with Jimmy Carter and Paul Spong, who had helped originate the Save the Whales campaign for Greenpeace. That's where I caretaked up in Alert Bay. I saw two people there that went from obscurity to affecting global issues. And I thought, well, I don't know if I'll ever affect, what I'll affect or not affect, but there's nothing to stop any of us from putting our mind and our heart to it and just do our best and work hard and see what happens. So it seemed like, well, these are micro businesses. That's okay. We don't have to let ambition cause us to make poor choices. We can let ambition cause us to make choices that mattered to us and stand on that. Mm-hmm. Did I answer the original question?
Well, no, but you gave us some clarity on the movement forward of where you're going. But did you encounter a big challenge and how do you deal with challenges? Like, if you could just share with us maybe a challenge that you faced while you have been moving through where you are even to this day. It could be a challenge from last week or like 10 years ago or more. But how do you face them? And what is one of the
question? I think what I learned over time is that we have the potential to make a challenge out of every single thing that happens. We can resent, we can be negative about ourselves, we can be victims. And I guess alongside this work, this business work, myself and my partner and other friends, our accountant, our kind of our circle of close friends, got involved with some personal growth work that looks to me somewhat like, I looked at the video of your work, and it was that type of zone, which was digging in and finding out, who am I? Why am I grumpy so much? Why do I feel put upon? Those kinds of things. And basically going into the psychological and emotional and spiritual realms to understand, to seek happiness. Really, that was to seek happiness. But simultaneously with these businesses, that's what we were doing, some of that. And that wasn't planned. That was just looking around and figuring out what to do next. So we can make challenges out of anything.
Or opportunity.
Which is a huge opportunity. And through numbers of experiences and lessons and learning and things, I realized that I had a lot more personal power to make choices
Mhm.
about how I responded to the world and how I looked at the world. And that has been the most important answer to dealing with challenges of anything.
Mhm.
So then we could go into, well, the financial challenge, you don't have the right CEO, or you don't get, people aren't getting along, or your product's not really getting across to consumers, or I mean, there's endless ways in which the world doesn't just deliver us exactly how we want it.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe that it is these inner skills that make the difference. You can muscle through it. You can toughen up and muscle through it and force your way through, and you can get financial success. And if you're lucky, maybe there is some kind of spiritual influence on you, or a people, your family, or something that help you through that. Come back to your humanity. Come back to your humanity. But I think a better and easier method is to just assume from the beginning. I feel like business schools should be teaching human beingness first.
Yeah.
At the whole school, education should do that. And the mechanistic part, the how do I borrow money, how do I hire and fire, all those things, those are very learnable. So challenge.
So the
Uh,
challenges, it sounds like for you, the challenges are opportunities to figure it out and
yes, and I don't want to candy coat it. I mean, they are that, and when they're really challenges, I'm agitated, I'm annoyed, I'm frustrated. Why did this happen today? Why do I have to deal with this? I got too many other things. There's all, but I pretty much now am trained. If all else fails, get a good night's sleep. Look at multiple sides, question myself, and remember that I'm going to be making micro and macro choices as I go through this circumstance to be more direct, more honest, more real. I statements. Why am I feeling bad about what's going on? What do I think needs to happen here? And be real with all of that, so then I come in healthier to the challenge. And my experience is that helps other people act better as well.
beautiful. It's the most conscious, present, and an expansive way of dealing with life.
I believe that.
Yeah. So thank you for holding that space and knowing that that's truth, because that's the way that everything from relationships to family to business creates a foundation to be strong upon, to stand upon. So
And there's underneath it requires some practice. And excuse me. Well, I'll go to a simple question. If I'm an entrepreneur, do I know what success looks like?
mm,
What actually is success? How much is enough money? What's the end game when I look back from my deathbed? What matters?
mhm,
If you start down those pathways of curiosity and inquiry, you might define how much is enough. That would, the world would be a very different place
mhm,
if people did that. And if you have enough money,
yeah,
if you have enough money, then what about all that other human energy and magic and capacity that you have to do other things with? So I believe that but by not helping us figure out these things early in life, what matters, what do I care about, what kind of person do I want to be, that we're kind of left to our own to flounder around and watch television and see what the models are, and it's make $1 billion to be somebody, and everything else gets set aside to accumulate more and more power and security around us. But we don't. There's a lot of other ways to get empowered and to get security and to have a happy life.
and Joel, I know that I've heard you speak of this too, and it's really resonant to the work that I do, because the in the program that I teach, it's called Get Intimate with Your Digits, and it's about cultivating enoughness.
Yeah.
So in finance, in every area, so it's a level of satisfaction in our lives. And I believe that when you cultivate that enoughness, that is success. And everything else is bonus.
Just this morning, I saw another variation of. We know that there's people living on $1 a day.
Mhm.
The planet. We're happy now because it's starting to move up towards $2 a day, and fewer people are in that kind of extreme poverty. But the fact I saw today was, if you're a Canadian and you earn $5,000, you're ahead of the majority of the world.
Yeah. Mhm.
Now, I don't want to live on $5,000 here in Canada. That's it's not that simple,
Yeah,
but it's good to have some perspective.
it's true. Yeah. If you could, in a sentence or two, um,
I
and
said we've got till tomorrow.
I know. um, and I love everything that you've shared. So it's all been packed full of greatness.
Thank
Um,
you.
is that what is your vision of your future, the future? What do you imagine?
You can pre-order on Amazon and get a book called The Clean Money Revolution. Um, but I'm happy to do my best to share that. Um, First, on the pragmatic level, civilization is in trouble.
Mhm.
Humans have outpaced with our tools, particularly as we move to the Industrial Revolution and now the technological revolution. We have far outrun our psychological and spiritual mastery and skills. Therefore, we're getting empowered with bigger and bigger and more damaging tools, and we are changing the climate on the planet. We're apparently changing the geological history of the planet. We are about to cause extinction of many, many more species. The oceans are getting acidified. The atmosphere is getting compromised, and on and on. And when I look at the fact that there were less than 3 billion people on the planet when I was born, and there are now over 7 billion, and it looks like some of you in the room could live till 10 billion people. Well, that's obviously just in itself a big issue, but the fact that we don't have a mechanism to get together and think about how this Garden of Eden will carry forward for future generations to be able to enjoy the kinds of things we have is an intersection of severe complexity coming upon us. And there is still time, I hope and I believe, if trillions of dollars were shifted from unaware and basically asleep kinds of uses. I can go more into that in a moment about what we do with our money. But there's trillions of dollars. There's more than enough money to solve pretty much every problem on the planet. But we don't have a good mechanism yet of how to corral that and inspire it and show leadership, I guess, at every level of life to cause us to do it. So in the book, I've put forth obviously just it's really a metaphorical point that says as much as $50 trillion in North America, which includes Mexico, is going to change hands through death, through generational transfer. And it's moving into new values, moving into the hands with new values and new opportunities to be more visionary and thoughtful and deep about it. And so that's where my hope comes from, is that we elders who are holding those funds are realizing that we've got to go further and do more, that this is not a spectator sport, and that most of us, we have a bank account, we make we make purchasing decisions, we influence people, we invest, and we hold money, and that money has our name on it. That money we own, and it is doing things that we need to understand on behalf of us.
Mhm.
We need to follow those dollars and understand what the companies we invest in or the products we purchase, how people and places are being affected across the globe. So we're all part of the system, and the system is accelerating in such a way that I'm concerned about the future of civilization. So I put forth a very simplistic, in the sense of it's not an academic document at all, but a vision of shifting $100 trillion from destructive investing to regenerative investing might halt a train wreck and give us a soft landing. So there's a chance for future generations.
I hold that. I hold that with you. Contribute. I have someone raising their hand. Do you mind? Chris?
Hey, Joel, you said that.
Can you hear that, Joel?
Can you hear it?
I can.
You can look here.
You said that humans, we've outpaced our psychological mastery.
Yeah.
I don't know what you mean by that.
Organized religions that have been successful have defaulted to this same system. I think that they often give us a blessing of salvation without having to think about what our money's doing. I think it's ignored by the spiritual traditions. It's ignored, as I said, by education and by basically everywhere. It's ignored. But I look to the spiritual traditions with hope that that would be a place that these questions would be raised, and it is in many spiritual traditions. But by ignoring, leaving us on our own to learn from where, how to understand the human being and our self, and what are the, I'm talking about all the way back through the generations at some level to at least understand. I'm reminded regularly that I'm from people who were burned out of their villages and exterminated repeatedly through history. I carry some of that trauma inside me, whether I can see it or not. Whether I was the perpetrator, the oppressor, or whether I was the oppressed, actually, we're both affected by it. So I think that though we might learn how to be able to navigate buying a home and figuring out how to have children and get them educated, et cetera, I don't think that we have kept up on those inner skills in creating advanced humans. So that's what I mean by that.
And that makes, yeah, I can feel that and see that.
So I think there are many good people. I'm looking across at North Vancouver, and I'm in an apartment where I see the downtown where the powers that be make money and do things, and there are many good people. This is not about that. Everybody's got the potential, but we've stayed fairly limited beyond kind of, here's how I can be a good family person. Here's how I can be a good neighbor. Here's how I can be a good citizen. But I'm not asked, nor do I often choose to look at, where is my money? Is it being a good citizen?
So I'm gonna kind of, because that, on that note, that is absolutely the perfect note for us to kind of move into our next phase of what we're doing today, because really, truly, it's one of the most unexplored energies on the planet, money. And I think the work that you're doing, the work that I'm doing, the work that we're doing is really about recognizing how unexplored it is. And we got to start somewhere. Yeah, thank you once again. And I look forward to seeing how we can unpack the financial landscape, our own money landscape, and see because I think there's some brilliance that hasn't been unlocked yet around how we can shift the consciousness of money, because it is a powerful energy.
Thank you each so much for the work that you're doing and that you're devoting yourself to this exploration. May it go forth and prosper.
Thank you.